If I were Xi Jinping, what would I do about Taiwan? That's going to be the topic of today's geopolitical strategy, whatever you want to call it. The talk is designed to invoke thought and nothing more. And I'm watching my son over here, he's making a lot of noise. So crack open a beer. This is not anything other than just me and you, the viewer, sitting here. Imagine we're at a bar having a beer, just talking about the subject. And yes, it's connected to the drone sightings in New Jersey. But even if it's not, my argument still stands of what I'm going to say Xi Jinping should do. And I'm not saying he should do it, but what I'm going to do is step into his shoes. It's always good in any situation, whether you have adversaries or you're trying to negotiate with somebody, put yourself in their shoes and look at things from their perspective, and you'll learn a lot more about the situation, right? So I'm going to be Xi Jinping for a minute. The Taiwan issue. They view Taiwan as a breakaway province. It's a slap in the face every time they look out there. It's very close to their shore. Obviously, they want to control the Taiwan Strait. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem in their 100-year plan, which is up in 2049. That Taiwan is brought back under their control. They're basically separatists, traitors, whatever you want to call them, right? It's a big issue. So I started this talk. I talked for probably like 2 hours this camera, and I said it's too long. I got to compress what I want to say. So I'm going to put myself in his shoes, and I'm just going to tell you up front. If I were Xi Jinping, I would invade Taiwan on January 1st, 2025 at 10 a.m. local time, which would be, 9 o'clock Washington, D.C. time. Why would I pick that day? For several reasons, okay? Number one, tactically, everybody on New Year's Eve in America is drinking and or drunk or in the party mode. They're not thinking about anything other than just partying, right? Let's get the new year started, and hopefully the next year will be better than this one. So that is a major advantage when you've got 80% of Americans drinking, drunk, people are on leave, there's a skeleton crew. If you have to call people in, even though they're not supposed to be drinking, they're drinking. It's a great time to pull something off like this. And that's why I would pick 10 a.m. on January 1st, 2025. 2, there's a gap in leadership. Oh, by the way, people in Taiwan are probably been celebrating all night. Now they're hungover and still drunk from the night before. So your adversaries all around are inebriated and at a disadvantage. And there's a skeleton crew of those who are sober and on duty. Okay, 2, there's a gap in leadership. There has been in America for 4 years. And there is a huge gap right now because there's an outgoing administration. It's Christmas. There's nobody up there that wants to make a decision because they're worried about trying to find a job next year when the new administration takes over. So there is nobody driving the bus. Look at Normandy, the Normandy landings. Rommel was visiting his wife because it was their anniversary. He's in charge, but he's not on the scene. They were scared to wake up Hitler. So no decisions could be made immediately, and that gave the Allies a several hour advantage because nobody was there to make decisions. So Xi Jinping has, if I'm looking at it from his eyes, I have this window up until Trump is sworn in. If I'm going to take Taiwan, it has to be before he gets sworn in or after the guy gets out of office and Democrats get back in. But how many years do we have until 2049? Well, 49 minus 24, what is that? well, let's go to 28 because we know who's going to be president. So 38, 48, that's 21 years, right? So if Trump gets out in 4 years, 21 divided by 4, that's like 5 terms, potentially 5 different people. But if they serve 2 terms each, you're looking at 2 or 3 people that they have to look at and evaluate when is their window to take Taiwan. It's not in the next 4 years with Trump. It was the past 4 years, but now that Trump is coming back, that window closes. So imagine if you have to take Taiwan by 2049, you can only do it in 4-year blocks where you're not going to get knocked out to the point that the juice is not worth the squeeze. My son's over there making a mess. So if I have to wait at least 4 years and the next guy's a conservative Republican that's going to hit back really hard, then I got to wait a total of 8 years. Now is the time that I would do it. Okay? Because of the gap in leadership, tactically and strategically. These guys study the art of war. How many times do I say it? I'm about to back up what I say by a current statement that comes from the Chinese Defense Ministry. They follow the art of war. So the Chinese and the US and other people have submarine drone technology, the same as we have aerial drone technology. One of my theories, and whether it's true or not, this is still what I would do if I'm going to invade Taiwan. I send out flotillas of drone submarines around the world armed with aerial drones. You know, these things can surface, they can launch the bigger drones, or they can remain submerged and shoot them out just like we shoot missiles out with compressed air and that type of system, right? It's not rocket science. But no different than shooting a missile from a submarine. They can shoot a fleet of drones, a swarm of drones. And that's a theory of what's going on in New Jersey right now, because it's not just New Jersey. It's areas along the West Coast. It's, Ramstein over in Germany. Oh, by the way, there was a Chinese cargo ship that drug its anchor for 100 miles and ripped up 2 fiber optic cables recently. Was that a cover so they could move drone subs into position so they can launch these swarms over targets in Germany? Yeah, that's reaching. That's a big, that's out there. But again, if I'm planning to take Taiwan, this is the diversion. The diversion in America has been going on for a solid month. People are so focused on this. Everybody is focused on these drones flying around, which don't need to be lethal or contain any lethal cargo. It just needs to tie up resources in the US, in Germany, anywhere the US has assets that we have to protect. Now the focus is on Force Pro, dealing with these drones that I sent out from these drone subs. And now, while the distraction is over here, I take Taiwan. It just sets the perfect conditions. It just makes perfect sense. That's what I would do. That's how I would fight the enemy, whether or not, or trudge through enemy territory, whether or not. It's all the art of war. So, if that's what's going on in New Jersey, okay, why aren't they seeing them take off, and why aren't they seeing them land? Well, if you're launching them from drone subs, they get launched, the drone sub heads back to either where it's from, or it just goes out to deep water, deep sixes itself, it implodes. Now all the pieces are at the bottom of the ocean. The drones fly around. Once they get done, they fly out, 50 miles, 60 miles over the ocean, deep six themselves. Pretty simple. That's why you're not seeing them. So the only way we can collect evidence is if somebody brings one down over land. Then what would you see? That's what I would do. Now, if they were armed, then you risk the escalation. So if I were Xi Jinping, I wouldn't arm any of them. It's just a distraction. It's an absolute distraction. If you arm them and go do things, now it's truly a world war and you're going to get hit on the mainland. But if I initiated the attack on Taiwan on New Year's Day, I think it would be so fast and so surprising, just like the Tet Offensive, because nobody thinks people are going to invade somewhere on a holiday. We just don't think like that. Got caught with our pants down, Tet 68 in Vietnam. I think they could take Taiwan so fast that the U.S. military wouldn't have time to react because they wouldn't have the authority to react and nobody would make a decision. We just saw the war games. I'll go through those again. Taiwan's defense ministry says a large Chinese military force has been detected nearby. That was on the 10th. What was different about these drills was that they didn't announce them and make a big, huge propaganda machine out of it, which they normally do, to the point like they, make the president of Taiwan look like a little devil and stuff. They're childish about it. They put on a big propaganda machine. This time they said nothing. They didn't notify anybody. They just did it. What was also strange is instead of their normal drills, from what I understand, they sort of bypassed Taiwan and went out went west and basically formed like a wall, to where it's almost like they've perfected the invasion plans, and now they're putting delaying actions out here. So if the U.S. Navy, the cavalry is coming here, they're going to encounter two waves, basically wall of Navy ships, Chinese Navy ships, and that delays them. So the only people going to be able to get to Taiwan are either aircraft or subs. So it's like, hey, we've already got plan A down, now let's just get the blocking maneuver down. And it looks like that's what they just practiced, was the blocking maneuver. But again, there's nobody in DC to make the decisions. So they could be in Taiwan occupying all the government buildings before anybody in DC makes a decision, or they even figure out who's in a position to make a decision. We have an Alzheimer's patient for a president. The laughing hyena, what's her name, Kamala, I haven't even seen her. Nobody's seen that woman since she got defeated. Who is driving the boat up there? The answer is nobody. It's a ghost ship. So again, if I'm Xi Jinping, that's my date. That's my window. What would the response be? The response from Trump, obviously they would condemn everything, but there's that window where things get normalized, they get moved in, so that by the time he gets inaugurated, okay, by the time he gets put into office, what's done is done. What's done is done. There is no, hey, now we're going to go in there and boot him off the island. That would ratchet shit up too much. What's done is done. And they would almost be doing Trump a favor. And this is sort of when you have to look at a game of chess and say, would this actually help the long-term negotiations? You're like, oh man, you're crazy, right? So I'm not crazy, because I told you Taiwan is not it's not negotiable. So how do you negotiate with the Chinese when Taiwan is not an option? You have to make some sacrifices. You have to make some hard decisions. People say that Roosevelt knew that the attack on Pearl Harbor was going down and he had to let it go, because he had to sacrifice that to gain the approval of the American people, because we American people at the time thought that it was Europe's war. They didn't want to get involved. How do you get the entire population involved? You have to create the enemy. And here comes the enemy. You have to let it play out. Now, that's pretty sinister to think, but if you look at it without the emotion, it makes sense. People have their theories about 9/11. I think those are way far out there. But you have to get the backing of the public in some form or fashion. And sometimes consent has to be manufactured. Gulf of Tonkin, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, communists building airfields in Grenada. It's the manufacture of consent, right? So is there like a wink between Trump and Xi Jinping, like, hey man, you go ahead and take Taiwan right now. I'm obviously going to condemn you. We're going to move more forces into the Philippines. You know that's coming, what have you, but it's coming anyhow. You take Taiwan, we'll boot you off of some of those little islands, or you give up some of those islands that's claimed by the Philippines, and then we'll sort of stabilize things. Okay, you've got the check mark off on your to-do list. You've got Taiwan. Then we start negotiating other things, and everybody can get back to making money. But you cannot sit down with the CCP and negotiate anything if you're going to keep Taiwan as is. It's just going to keep going and going and going. And once the fighting starts, it'll be worse on down the line. Does that make sense? So if they take Taiwan between now and the time he gets put in office, it actually makes it easier for him to negotiate. Does that make sense? It's just not one of those things where you can just keep coming back to the table and keep coming back to the table, and the Chinese say, okay, we won't fuck with Taiwan. They got a deadline. It's 2049. Between now and 2049, that shit has to be under control. What scares me is their expansionism, the way they're expanding around the world. That's why I compare them to the Nazis. They're in a land grab, and they're using very strong arm tactics. Okay, anyhow, I'm supposed to be Xi Jinping, right? The U.S. isn't ready, but we, the CCP, the Chinese Navy, the Chinese military, were ready. We're ready to take Taiwan, a small rock right off of our coast. They can pull that off. Let's see. So, 100-year plan, we might as well get it on. So what do they say? Beijing said the where and when of its military exercises, it's a matter for us to decide. They're basically not giving anybody a heads up, not asking for permission. We're doing what we want to do. There's nothing anybody else can do about it. Now, the recent drills marked a departure from the usual wave of propaganda that has previously accompanied China's war games around Taiwan. So that's the big difference. There's a difference in their MO. Now, when they started talking about it, let me pull up my article here. China's new tactic against Taiwan: drills that dare not speak their name, is what the Taiwanese are calling it. China's military said nothing until Friday, when it quoted ancient Chinese tactician Sun Tzu's Art of War, a favorite of the Communist Republic's founder, Mao Zedong. Just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. The Defense Ministry said in a cryptic statement that neither confirmed nor denied that Beijing had been holding military exercises. While I'm going through this, I've run across this book that's called 100-Year Marathon: China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower. It was written in 2016, or published in 2016. And it talks about it. I haven't read the book, but I read the intro. And for more than 40 years, the U.S. has played an indispensable role helping the Chinese government build a booming economy, develop its scientific and military capabilities, and take its place on the world stage, in the belief that China's rise will bring us cooperation, diplomacy, and free trade. But what if the China dream is to replace us, just as America replaced the British Empire, without firing a shot? Okay, you look at the Art of War. What's it basically say? That you know, the smart general wins without ever having to fight. And I think that's what the Chinese are doing. That's my talk. You see how everything ties in? Everything ties in. I'm just trying to put myself in his position, and I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But if you don't step into your adversary's shoes and view things through their eyes, there's a lot of pressure from everybody in the Chinese Communist Party for this thing to take place. It's got to happen. So at some point, whether Xi Jinping wants to do it or not, he has to go forward and say, okay, I give the order to strike, to execute, take Taiwan. Good, bad, ugly, win, lose, draw, he's got to swing the bat or his ass is out of there because he's weak. And they get egg on their face. If you're not familiar, in Asia, you know, in Thailand they call it face, right? It's your reputation, it's your status. In the West we're taught sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, other cultures don't subscribe to that. I truly think that among all of my Asian friends and family, if you gave them a choice, hey, I'm either going to slap you across the face in public in front of everybody, or we can go behind the building over there and I'm gonna hit you 10 times with my fist. They would all choose the fist behind the building where nobody can see that, because they're gonna lose face if they get slapped in front of all these folks. I think that's what the West don't understand, is that every time they look out there at Taiwan, and every time somebody from Taiwan goes and visits an American, you know, anywhere in American territory, or has conversations with an American official, or weapons get sent over there, it's much more than just, hey, now they got guns. It's just an absolute slap in the face publicly. And we from the West have a hard time understanding the gravity of that. So you're not going to negotiate with the CCP to say, hey, let Taiwan be its own country and we'll give you this. Every day it's a slap in the face in public. That's my personal observation. So there you go, folks. That's my talk. There's some videos that I linked to in the previous video to show some of this underwater drone technology. Like, it's pretty interesting. You know, they call them multi-domain drones, so the drone can fly around and then it can drop down in the water and then submerge itself, and then basically, you know, use the propellers to drive around in the water. So theoretically, a multi-domain drone can take off from a submarine that's submerged, fly around, do what it's going to do, go back to the water, drop in the water, go down to the drone sub or sub, and be recovered. And there's the submarine is never on the surface of the water. Now, I think the bigger drones, they obviously have to surface and launch and get recovered from the surface. But if you watch some of those videos, it's pretty damn impressive, the capability of some of these multi-domain drones. So, you know, time will tell. Time will tell. Eventually the information will come out about what's going on in New Jersey. But if it's not hobbyists, it's not our own stuff, it's not a special access program. And oh, by the way, one of those, a police officer, a sworn police officer, said he saw 50 coming from the ocean. It makes perfect sense. They're being launched from drone submarines. And these drone submarines have ranges, my gosh, they can get here. It just makes sense that's what they're doing. And then when their flight time is over, back to the ocean. There's probably hundreds of them on the bottom of the ocean floor right now, if that's what's going on. Again, it's a big if. Nobody knows. But again, I just talk about it to invoke thought. Just by making these two videos, I've already learned a whole lot of stuff that I didn't know about. You know, it is good that I learned it. It's good that I caught up on this stuff, and maybe you'll learn something as well, or go research something as well. But it's just scary. The drone submarine technology is scary as shit. The drone technology is scary as shit. But when you combine those two and realize that they can launch an infinite number of drone subs to go anywhere on the planet and just lie there and wait until they give the command, or it's autonomous, pre-programmed, and they can launch 50, 100, 150, 200, however many tubes they have room for. And you're just sitting there in New Jersey, or you're sitting in there in Fort Lauderdale drinking a pina colada, and here's fucking hundreds of drones coming up out of the ocean. And you think, what the hell is going on here? And it almost starts to explain a lot of the UFO, UAP sightings that are connected to water. It makes a lot of sense that they're coming from drone submarines. Why send people? Why send people in submarines or aircraft when you don't have to? We see the warfare is getting phased out. It's getting phased out where there's no pilots in aircraft. Our aircraft of the next generation will be nothing. They'll be drones. There's no pilots. There's no need for a pilot. Why wouldn't submarines be the same thing? Ships, the same thing. It's just going to be, warfare will evolve into nothing but robotics and drones, at least for the first waves. It doesn't even make sense to recover, even if they're multi-domain drones. They're so cheap to build, and China can manufacture these things so fast. There's no use in recovering them. Okay, the drone sub comes in, the minute they launch, it heads out to deep water, implodes, there's no evidence, or just pieces. Those things go back out over deep water. Maybe they have some type of self-destruct charge. They're just pieces on the bottom of the ocean. Because China can produce hundreds and thousands of those things like they're nothing. They're just disposable. That's pretty scary. And it's, you know, I got kids, and you just look 10, 20 years down the line, see what's going on right now, and you're like, where is the world headed? It just doesn't seem to be headed in any positive direction. I don't know. Let me know what you think down in the comments.